Welcome to the 359. I'm Ben Fox Rubin.
I'm Alfred Ng.
Uber wants to make flying cars a reality. Our colleague Claire Riley traveled to Tokyo to cover an Uber conference that's focused on the ride-hailing company's skyward ambitions. Uber plans to start trials in 3 pilot cities as soon as 2023 and already has designs for its air taxis. Alfred, how realistic do you think any of this is?
I get it. Pilot cities. I mean, I think the technology is probably there for it. I think there's going to probably be a lot of, issues that come with it as it starts. And I think you have much less room for errors when it comes to flying cars. Take a look at the technology Uber's testing out on U.S. roads with like self-driving cars. You looked at what happened with that one fatal accident in Arizona, I believe.
I think you're right about that, yeah.
And then, you kind of take a look at it from the perspective of flying cars now, where, I think there's a lot more dangers that come with that. And I think that's why I think it'll be a while before it comes to the U.S. So they've talked about this before, where they want to do it in countries where governments are much more likely to be willing to work with them, and also governments
a little more lax. Yeah.
Not lax, but more so that like they don't have all this like bureaucratic red tape to go through, where it's kind of like dictatorship countries, where they can kind of just say, what do you want to do this, and we'll do it.
Yeah. An interesting element that I saw from this related to the autonomous vehicles on the ground were that they eventually want to make these autonomous flying cars. They eventually want to make them autonomous as well by 2030. Mm-hmm. So I guess that would make them a little bit safer potentially, or at least they'd make them cost a lot less if you don't have pilots for every single one of them. So, kind of hard to tell. I'm not really sure what I feel about this. So I'm going to put it in the same file as Elon Musk creating a moon base and Amazon's delivery drones. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, it's a big file of big promises from tech companies that like we're not really sure like where this is going, but it sounds cool.
Yeah, it's fun to write about, that's for sure. Next up, Instagram's founders are heading out the door. Instagram CEO Kevin Systrom and Chief Financial Officer Mike Krieger will be leaving in the coming weeks. The departure comes as another seemingly bad piece of news for Instagram's owner, Facebook, which is having a really rough year. Now, they didn't specifically say why they were leaving the company, but this comes after Jan Koum, who is the founder of WhatsApp, also decided to leave Facebook this year. That was back in April. So I don't know. What do you think about this one?
There was a report in the Washington Post today that basically mentioned that they had issues with Mark Zuckerberg, which was also the same reason why WhatsApp founder left. And for keeping score here, I also clearly remember Facebook's legal officer leaving, I believe, in August. Mm-hmm. And that's coming after another. So, these are several big rounds of executives leaving Facebook. And this is a company that, they could have been making millions at, and for them to choose to leave there. They also, the Instagram founders mentioned that they want to, channel their creative energy more. Are they going to make the next Instagram or something like that? It's hard to tell, but I mean, it definitely is a bad sign for Facebook when, all this talent is choosing to get out of the company.
Yeah, absolutely. Last, tech analyst Ming-Chi Kuo reported that sales of the iPhone XS Max, I actually got that right, is far outselling the smaller XS. This makes a lot of sense to me because if anybody's going to buy like a cheaper new iPhone, I feel like they would get the XR instead. So if you're going to go and buy one immediately, you probably want to get the Max anyway.
Yeah, and if you already have a 10, it's kind of just, why would I get the XS when there's not that many differences? But the XS Max, I have much more reason to get that if I already own a 10.
Yeah, so according to this analyst, it's basically like for every 3 or 4 sales of the Max, that's like 1 sale of the XS, so it's doing a lot better. Anyway, if you want to read more about these stories, check us out on CNET. I'm Ben Fox Rubin.
I'm Alfred Ng.
Thanks for listening.
All right, thanks everybody for stopping by and joining us for the recording of the audio podcast, which you can subscribe to using the links below. Now we want to take your questions and comments to keep the conversation going. First and foremost, James, bless you. Many people are scared of flying in normal planes. I'm not sure flying cars are going to take off.
Zing!
I don't get it.
That's The other thing that we didn't mention on the podcast, by the way, was the whole issue with infrastructure. Uber said that they were going to spend something like, I don't know, $100 million or $100 million a year to create these skyports, which are basically, it's the same thing as a heliport where you get up and you take off and you land for these flying cars. But I think that the infrastructure, as Claire mentions in her story, is going to be much more extensive than that. And ultimately, it's gonna take a lot of time to try to figure out how you're gonna fit all these additional vehicles into the sky. They're supposed to fly somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000 feet in the air, if I remember correctly. I mean,
that's always been something really interesting that I feel was never addressed in any like futuristic movies that have flying cars. It's like, do you really think that there would be no such thing as traffic if like flying cars existed? Like Futurama was probably the best at like being realistic about it.
Fifth Element.
You were. Yeah, the Fifth Element too.
I'm sorry.
The problem with the Fifth Element was that was probably the most dangerous situation you could ever consider with flying cars. I mean, like Bruce Willis made it look really cool and interesting, but he was flying in between buildings, going up and down. That's like completely dangerous for most people.
And then what happens if it's like a police chase or something like that with flying cars? Then what?
I don't know. It sounds like an awesome movie, but I really am very skeptical.
That's my point. Like, there's a lot of like boring like issues that come with flying cars. I think when people like to think of flying cars, like go anywhere, and then you like don't really think about all the regulations that would like be in place, like traffic laws and things like that. And it's just, oh, cool, way to take something really cool and make it sound like really drab. So
yeah,
that's my job here at CNET.
Going in that direction too. So apparently these cars are supposed to be battery charged, so they could travel up to 60 miles on a single charge, and then they would get like, you could rapidly increase the battery charge in as little as 8 minutes or something. But it's another one of those issues where it's probably going to be really expensive initially, and it could only go 60 miles.
I don't know why they have to be cars. Why don't we have flying scooters like the bird scooters?
You could make a flying bird. Yeah, maybe.
And then you can just like rent them and like dock them and stuff. Leave them on like the roof of a building.
Could they have giant wings like a Pegasus? At least then I would kind of get into
that. I think wings are overrated.
Okay. We'll think of something. Maybe a bunch of birds will fly it around. I don't know.
Ready for some more questions?
I think so.
Datch says, I hope flying cars are autonomous. People can't drive in 2 dimensions. Could you imagine people driving in 3?
Totally.
Expanding on that, Mike Shaw is asking, would the flying cars be able to talk to each other with 5G? And even further down in the chat, Alex Mitchell is saying it's more likely that when this all comes to fruition, we're going to be on to 6G and beyond.
Yeah, probably. I mean, having the cars talk to each other, this is completely hypothetical, but making sure that the cars could actually talk to each other, especially if they're autonomous, makes a lot of sense, and that's probably how they would actually do it and make sure that it would be safer. That's the same idea with autonomous vehicles on the road as well, where if the cars are not only autonomous but have some amount of awareness around them, they could significantly reduce the number of accidents because they would know what other cars were not only in front of them, behind them, but also around the corner, across the city. So you would have to do something similar to that with flying cars.
Yeah, that's really the only way I would see flying cars working out in a safe way. Just in the sense, like if people are driving their own flying cars, it's like there's going to be a lot of accidents. And
to me, it seems like this is initially going to be like a cheaper version of having like a private helicopter.
Yeah.
That's how they're going to start it. And if they have any plans on making this a mass market thing, they would have to make them autonomous. Mm-hmm. That's where they're hoping to save money. The initial cost of Uber Air, they say at launch, would be $6 per passenger mile traveled. So
$6 a mile?
$6 a mile.
That's kind of crazy.
I mean, how much is a taxi cab in New York?
Definitely not $6
Definitely not
a mile.
I feel like it's somewhere between $1 or $2. It's like $2 to $3, something like that. So more than double. But hey, you get to tell your friends that you showed up at the party from a flying car.
I can tell my friends that anyway. Well, what are they gonna do? Go outside and look for the flying car? Like that's
your friends are much more gullible than my friends. But yeah, that's a good point.
Okay, but even if you did show up in a flying car and you told your friends that, they still wouldn't believe you. If your friends aren't gullible, they wouldn't believe you. Like
You're right. Anyway, more questions.
Srinjoy, what are the rules for public airspace usage? That's a complicated one. I don't know how well we can dive into that.
They're working on that same issue with drones too. They're hoping to get like different bands of public airspace where they would utilize drones. That's the area that I know about specifically because I cover Amazon. So I feel like the band between 1,000 and 2,000 feet in the air, they would hope to create that to allow for air taxis or flying cars. So my assumption is that they would have to create new regulations to make sure that that area would be workable. But again, this is all caveated on the fact that like none of this exists, and this is going to take a really long time for them to air this out. So
Air it out, nice.
Thank you.
Good stuff,
Wow,
good
I'm
stuff,
totally
man.
not doing any of these on purpose, but my puns are really taking off. So thank you.
I mean, it's not like we haven't
Pilots.
dreamed about flying cars for decades. I mean, this isn't a new idea, but I'm interested to see how they, excuse me, plan to actualize it.
It's just like, for some reason, anytime something cool in a cartoon or a movie happens in real life, it just doesn't seem as cool anymore. Like when like smartwatches came out, like all the commercials for them were basically like, yo, remember when Dick Tracy had like he could talk into his watch, and then remember, you know, like the Power Rangers had their like watch and things like that. Check it out. Now Samsung, we've got our own smartwatch. And then it's just like, this isn't cool anymore. I don't like this anymore.
It's like when your mom joined Facebook.
I agree with you though, in that, I mean, like if I got an Apple Watch and my friends got Apple Watches, like we couldn't create Voltron, and that's really annoying.
Very uncool.
Yeah, it's super sucky.
But
so.
if you got the flying cars, you're a step closer then.
Look,
You could summon the flying car with your watch and then
yeah,
crash them into each other and make a giant robot.
sure.
More questions. James asks if this is going to have any kind of impact on airlines. Would cheap flight airlines be affected by this kind of implementation?
Great question. Probably not, because these would be much shorter, like in-city flights.
I mean,
would
considering we
imagine.
haven't figured out fuel efficiency and they're talking about $6 a mile, do you think you're going to take this to the next county or state over? I doubt
Yeah, I
it.
imagine it'd be really expensive. I feel like it'd be comparing the differences between like having your own car versus taking a bus.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, like I think airlines would still be the cheaper and probably safer option.
Well, for now, they're only talking about 60 miles on a single charge. So you're not going to take a flying car, nor would I think that it would make any logical sense to like go from New York to LA in a flying car. It wouldn't work that way. I don't believe so. They would be in cities, and maybe the furthest you would go is like to go from the city to visit your nice grandma.
I will
in the
say it
suburbs.
is it's a much nicer alternative to taking the subway if it were available in New York. Because the subway infrastructure is all like messed up. So either they can spend millions of dollars and years trying to fix that, or just, you know, do away with them and have those
Create
tunnels.
a new thing.
Yeah, just have those tunnels be empty where the mole people can live.
One interesting thing that Claire's story references is that they've done studies about ride-hailing companies like Uber and Lyft, and they found that at this point, those ride-hailing companies are just clogging up the roads a lot more. So the idea of alleviating some of the space and helping them continue to grow, that's a big reason to create something like Uber Air, because a lot of the times these ride hailing, you know, the folks that are working for Uber or working for Lyft are just driving around waiting for their next ride. And
So they can levitate instead.
yeah, or they could just be like sitting on top of skyscrapers, so they're not clogging the roads
You
up
know
anymore.
those parking lots in the city that like are kind of stacked on top of each other? They don't need
Those are parking garages.
No, they have like outside parking lots too.
Right, yes.
No,
I know what you
not
mean.
buildings, my dude.
The ones where they essentially lift the cars up.
Yeah,
on
Yeah. I
thing.
passed one by on my way to work. Okay, now I'm following you.
They don't need those anymore. They can just fly it right into it
Yes.
instead.
This is. I'm like, as we're talking about this, I'm like progressively being like, okay, this is not gonna happen.
Yeah.
Probably in my lifetime, but these are fun questions to answer, so keep them coming.
Can you imagine driver's ed? Like, what self-respecting teacher out there would sign up for this to say, let's put a teenager behind the wheel of one of these?
No, they would be.
They've
From what I
gotta be
understand,
autonomous.
these are going to be pilots up until the point that they make them autonomous. The problem is that making them autonomous, like somebody mentioned the point that like I'm afraid of like regular flying, then like if you're in an autonomous vehicle or an autonomous flying car, one of them is going to crash eventually. And when that does actually happen, who knows how that's actually going to impact the market, and if people are going to be concerned and say like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah, I'm also very curious what the potential for like terrorist attacks with like flying cars would be.
Okay, great. Yeah, now this just got super dark. You're absolutely right though.
That is a question in the chat.
Yeah. I mean, it's
I'm a
really
dark
legitimate
person, man.
It's a totally legitimate point, and it's something that would be happening in very dense areas like cities. So making them autonomous could also potentially help with that. But at the same time, Alfred, you being a cybersecurity reporter, you probably know that any system could get hacked. So, and we've seen like some early signs of that with autonomous vehicles on the ground.
Yeah, I'm very curious, like what the security going into these cars, as far as like the pilot programs go, is. But yeah, I'm not going to one of these 23 cities that they're testing it out in. I know none of them are going to be in the U.S.
I know. That's where you're wrong. Hold on. 3 pilot cities: Los Angeles, Dallas in the United States, and then a third international city that they haven't announced yet.
Oh, then I am wrong. But I'm
it's
very
okay.
curious.
And I will be staying put.
Yeah, I'm very curious about how they got like not permits, but like, just got like the okay to do that in those cities. Those are really condensed like cities. Are they actually going over like highways and roads, or is it like in an airfield kind of area?
I would probably think the
that
latter.
Makes a lot more sense.
I would probably think that these are happening at airports or something like that. So yeah.
James is asking if we know how they're powered. Is it going to be jets or fans? Are they going to like blow over stuff in the street, knock over fences?
So they're apparently supposed to be way quieter than helicopters. I'm going to read this from Claire's story. Uber's design has 4 sets of twin rotors that it uses for vertical lift and a single rotor for forward propulsion. Its cruise speed is 150 to 200 miles per hour and an altitude, I mentioned this earlier, of 1,000 to 2,000 feet, and could travel 60 miles on a single charge. So it would be battery charged. So hopefully that answers the question. They do have the initial design.
Because Datch is asking about fuel efficiency, and that's not bad, really, when you think about it, to send a flying car 60 miles on a single charge. That's really not bad out the gate.
If it's in the city, sure. Yeah, I know, but it's still very preliminary. Like if they actually do these trials by 2023, I'll be pretty impressed. And, hopefully we send somebody from CNET out to Dallas to check them out.
Well, until then, we can all just dream along with Srinjoy about the Intel Volocopter.
Oh yeah. God.
It was so dumb.
Damn. Yeah, another company called Kitty Hawk. I think Larry Page. Yeah, Larry Page is backing that one. They're also they're developing one. There are a couple companies working on these.
So Kitty Hawk is being tested out in Las Vegas. I actually got an offer to try it out, but I don't want to go to Las Vegas, so I'm just gonna wait until it's more accessible. But yeah, Larry Page is funding that startup, and it is not based, but like they're flying it out like in Nevada.
Yeah. And meanwhile, there are a lot of trials that are going on far away from population centers in the United States for delivery drones and different types of drones as well. Amazon is working on a pilot delivery drone project in the UK right now with like a handful of people. So that's another one to look at. But all of these are now being like very tightly regulated and controlled. So it's going to take a while if any of this stuff hits the mainstream.
Yeah, and even when the technology finally does come to be true, it will be a regulatory nightmare. All right, let's move on to Facebook. Srinjoy asked, do you think Facebook will now pull Instagram's strings hard enough to affect it as a social media platform? I just remembered Slack acquiring and killing Astromail recently while typing this.
I think Facebook has had a really tough go this year, and them really rocking the boat at Instagram to me feels like a really bad idea. And that's a great way to instill a lot of fear and uncertainty for the people that decided to stick around after the founders left. So if you're definitely trying to get a bunch of people to like walk out the door really quickly, I feel like, yeah, do that, make a lot of changes really quickly. But at the same time, like Instagram is like one of the primary gems of Facebook, and they are probably, the way Facebook thinks, they're probably going to try to like take more advertising money out of them.
Yeah, I would argue that Instagram is most likely Facebook's future here, in the sense that, the younger folks are leaving Facebook, and but then they'll be like, oh, Instagram is still fine though. Like, there's all these issues with Facebook that, for some reason hasn't really hit Instagram yet. And it's easier for younger people to go there. Instagram Stories is pretty popular now among like teens and younger folks, whereas Facebook really isn't that popping anymore. So for them to like, for the Instagram founders, I mean, to kind of leave, like, makes me think, or like suggest, that Facebook is trying to have more of an influence on Instagram, and that they might not be that into that.
Yeah, it's the same thing with the WhatsApp founder, I think. But that's what happens when you acquire a company. Everything is like hunky-dory to begin with, and they say, oh, we're going to let you remain independent. But Facebook is a business. They've also, like, their stock has struggled a lot this year. So, and they very carefully kept adding more and more ads into Instagram. And I think the expectation is that, especially with the founders leaving, now Mark Zuckerberg can kind of have his way and add even more advertising into Instagram. So I would say expect that. But as far as like big wholesale changes to features, I think that if they are going to do that, they are going to roll that out a little bit more slowly, just to not scare the troops.
Can I just point out that the generation divide came to be very prominent in this last bit of conversation, whereas what Alfred described as poppin', Ben equated to honky-dory?
Yeah. I am 52 years old, so hunky-dory.
Oh, I'm 51, so.
Just a couple more questions before we say goodbye. Scott Myatt, do you think this is the slow decline of Facebook, and do we think it's going to go the way of MySpace?
No. I mean, like, MySpace, I think, was a much different, like, beast. I don't think it's fair to make comparisons between Facebook and MySpace. MySpace really hasn't had like the dominance that Facebook has had for such a long time. Like, considering, like, if Facebook were a country, like, they would have more people than like the US.
They would have more people than India and China put together.
Yeah, that's a better. I didn't know if it would be more than China, just because I like,
way more than China.
Okay, I forgot about the
That's
population.
cool. I'm 52 years old.
Yeah.
I'm a little older than you.
Yeah,
and I
there's
know
things
the
that you
population
learn
of China.
when you turn from 51 and 52.
You'll get there.
Yeah, like, comparing those two is like completely different. Like, Facebook has had this whole strategy of, we're going to be everything that you want to go on. Like, that's why they have like Facebook Live. That's why they have like they bought Oculus. That's why they bought Instagram. That's why they bought WhatsApp. It's MySpace was very different in the sense of like, we just want to be like this one thing. Like, you connect with your friends here and you post chain mails for your friends to share to 5 people, and the love of their life will kiss them tomorrow.
Boy, they did not hold on to that MO for very long.
But like Facebook, it's kind of like they want to be everything in the same way that like Walmart doesn't just sell one thing. It's like they want it to be like the everything store or whatever. Is that what Amazon calls themselves?
That's what Amazon's been called. But yeah. So they're the everything social network. That's a good way
so
of putting
that's
it.
kind of what Facebook wants to do. I mean, like, there's a reason why they bid for the rights to air what was it, Thursday Night Football?
Did Facebook end up?
Facebook was a part of that.
Yeah.
They didn't win
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
They
yeah.
didn't win
I thought
it.
it was Twitter.
Twitter actually had it
Twitter
for 1
got
year.
it, but
Yeah.
Facebook bid. Gotcha.
Yeah. Like, they're really trying to make it like, this is where you go for everything. And Google has done the same thing. So I think that's why it's a little bit different from Facebook's perspective. Now, will it be the downfall of just Facebook.com? I don't think it'll go away.
I don't even think that's possible.
I don't think it'll go away, but I do think that there are like a lot of younger people that are basically not really seeing a need or a use for Facebook anymore. Like, things are really, but then it's kind of like, so I don't use Facebook anymore, but I still use Facebook Messenger, which is a part. That's my point, though. Like, they're like setting up everything so that everyone is on it. And even if I'm not even if I'm not posting on somebody's wall or like wishing somebody happy birthday or going to events on Facebook, I'm still using Messenger to keep in touch with people. I'm still using like Instagram to upload a photo or something like that. So you can cut off one tentacle on like Facebook's like empire here, but like
Three
you're
more will grow back in its
not
place.
growing back, but you're still using like many
Yeah.
of its other ones.
Yeah, and when you
terrible
look
analogy.
at it from a competitive side, nobody is anywhere close to Facebook. I'm thinking about Snapchat, Twitter, and to a much smaller extent, Google Plus. There were a lot of expectations that Google was going to
Google Plus
dive
is
into
still a thing?
social.
So
It is still a thing, and Google has an enormous amount of resources,
Yeah.
but they never really saw the movement that
Yeah.
obviously they were hoping to get from that.
At many congressional hearings, Facebook will always be asked, do you consider Facebook a monopoly? They've asked this to Mark Zuckerberg and Sheryl Sandberg and Colin Stretch, and they always mention basically, the average person uses like 8 apps on their phone, and Facebook is just one of them. But like if you really take a look at the numbers, it's like okay, the average person uses 8 apps, but it's like Facebook is one of them.
5 of them
Instagram
are
is one of them.
Facebook-owned.
WhatsApp is one of them. Facebook Messenger is one of them. There's probably a 5th one too, but it's just like okay, cool. Like you're really gonna try to hide your hand here and say like, yeah, Facebook is only one of those 8 apps, except we own like a majority of the other ones as well.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong here too, is that usually when they're asked that question, they try to broaden it out as much as possible. And they say, well, if you're going to look at this from a social media perspective, obviously we're dominant. But if you look at it broadly from a digital media perspective or just like a user consumption perspective, we have to compete with television and radio and all the other internet sites that you go on.
Absurd to me, though, in the sense of, like they're saying, we're big in social media, but we're not big in like the internet, which is really funny to me because anytime, like you wouldn't ask an oil company that, like, are you a monopoly? I was like, well, we have to compete with all of business. Like that's not
have to compete with the guy that sells shoes.
Yeah, it's just like we have to compete with Nike. Come on, guys. And it's just like that's not like it's such a weird comparison for me.
They do. Amazon does the same argument, where they say like, from an international perspective, Amazon is less than 1%, I think, of international retail. So, but they don't own gas
big
stations.
oil.
They don't own gas stations, and a lot
Not
of people
yet,
still
at
buy
least.
gas. Yeah, you can't buy gasoline on Amazon.com. Come on, Bezos.
I got my fuel from Amazon Prime. It came to me in 2 days.
Oh, that's pretty awesome. Yeah, you ran out of gas the day earlier, man.
Fill up your Prime Mobile with Prime Juice. All right, we're just about out of time. Real quick on the iPhone. Mike Shaw says the iPhone XS and XS Max have been so inspiring to him. They inspired him to get the Samsung Note 9.
Got him.
James Fever says,
Boom.
and I think this is the most culminating statement about the entire development here today. The iPhone XS Max is the one with the biggest change. If you're going to actually get an upgrade, you might as well go all the way through. Why would you just get a phone that is almost a carbon copy of the one you already have?
Yeah, exactly.
Except for the price. Yes,
Yeah,
I
but-
agree with that argument, but like from the pricing perspective.
But if you're gonna
in
get a
that
price, though, you would just
ecosystem,
get the
you're
10R.
already throwing money
Yeah.
away.
Yeah, so the 10S is in like kind of this weird middle child like mode where, like if I'm going to get a new phone and would I want to get the one that has a larger screen? Wait, there's this whole thing with like the 10S Max and like the R like being the same size or something. I remember we were talking
okay,
about that.
so the R is 6.1 inches and the Max is 6.5 inches. And the 10S is smaller.
Yeah.
I think it's 5.8 inches, but somebody in the chat correct me on the
So it's
10S.
it's stuck in this weird phase where if I'm like going to buy a phone, why would I get this normal one that's the same thing as the 10 and even arguably the same thing as the 10R
and slightly smaller than the 10R.
and pay more money for it when I can get like the 10S Max or the 10R just for essentially the same thing for $250 less. It's in a very weird like phase right now. I don't really understand why it's there.
Yeah, which Apple kind of showed you their cards a little bit by sunsetting the 10 because they were like, the 10 is so damn similar to the 10S that if we kept it around, people would just buy the 10. If we cut the price on the 10 by $100, then why would anybody bother buying the 10S? It doesn't have any cool new features like an emoji or whatever.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I feel like we're going to have the Soylent revelation where it's like, the 10S is the 10.
Right.
It's people.
Yes.
I don't think Alfred gets the reference.
No, he doesn't. He's just
I don't-
51.
I just didn't see the problem with that. Like, eat people. It's fine.
That might be the most millennial thing you've said, and that's saying a lot.
Millennials are killing people. That's not cool.
That's the next market that the millennials will kill.
Yeah.
Humans. All right, we are out of time. We got to get going. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. We'll be back tomorrow to talk about something else innate or inane, or I don't know what terminology I really want to use in this situation. But go ahead and send us out, guys.
More about flying cars. Which am I looking at this one?
There's
don't
no
know.
prompter
That
here,
one.
dude. You gotta improv this one.
I gotta work on this.
All right, let me. The 359 podcast is available on CNET.com. That's the only. That's it.
It's the only one to check out, but you could also check it out on iTunes, TuneIn, Stitcher, FeedBurner, Google Play Music, and the Amazon Echo. Anyway, thanks everybody for your questions. Really appreciate it, and we'll see you again tomorrow.
Goodbye.